Man, don't you just hate it when gamers yell at their babies?
Well, to be honest, sometimes just too much going on in the game as well. You can't quite blame the parent too much, but there's something in there.
I personally like blaming the baby.
I feel you, but think about the baby as well. Like can't really do anything back to you. Like you're just literally being a bully at that point.
I agree. I think this honestly, it's very easy to just step away from whatever's frustrating you and just take a moment, breathe, and go on. Um,
But what do you do though? Like you can't quite juggle as a parent. Sometimes it's very hard for you to like juggle video games, your hobbies, and your kid as well, right? So, what do you do at that point? Do you
You
just
you act like an adult and you take care of your kid.
yeah, act like an adult, set your priorities, man. Like I
Yeah,
understand
like
it's
this whole new gen about gamers and like streaming, it's terrible because you're catching like everyday people doing the stupidest suspect shit on stream, like that girl who threw her cat over her shoulder
whoa.
that was on the table.
do you think there's a
Or
publicity stunt though? Do you think that
I
this
don't
kind
think
of
so.
brings in?
I don't think it is. I think it's just them being their everyday selves and then slipping while they're on camera.
Yeah, I agree. They're just slipping, man. At the end of the day, like there's no excuse for it. It's just a matter of setting your priorities.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
if you're streaming for 5 6 hours, you know, it's hard to keep a facade for that long.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you know you're upset and you get angry at things like that, then you really should be um, either having somebody take care of whatever distractions are going to be in the room, or don't do them together. It's just simple as that.
yeah, just having someone like a second, like your mother or something, to just come in and just take care of the kid while you're playing video games. Talk it out between you two, right? You don't necessarily have to do it together because if you know you have an anger management problem, you might as well make that separate.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, like especially with multiplayer games, they can get you so heated, so heated. So you're just setting yourself up to fail at that point.
See, at that point, if you know that, like, why even play multiplayer with your kids being there in the first place, right? So maybe focus on something else. Maybe focus on a more cheerful game for you to kind of not get angry about. Make it a single player game, make it an adventure game, open world game, right? So um, again, comes down to just being yourself and setting your priorities and how you want to take care of your kid.
Yeah, I agree.
If I can't use my kid as a tool during streaming, then I don't want that kid. Throw him out.
Monetize it all the way.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Four Casuals. I am your host, and tonight we are joined by Rumi, Ryan, and Bones. Buddy, talk to me. In the last year, what games have you been playing? New releases, please. None of that old shit.
I was gonna say I was playing the last two games, the ones especially I've been really anticipating. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Doom Eternal.
Interesting. I've been playing Warzone. I played a little bit of Cyberpunk and I got refunded. And I've been playing the new season of Apex.
Yeah, for me, I played Cyberpunk, just like the whole hype train kind of got me into that game as well. And before that, I was playing Marvel's Avengers just because I'm a huge superhero fan. And before that was kind of a last year game, Red Dead Redemption 2. So that kept me going for the 2020.
That was a good game.
That was
I
really
heard it.
good.
I heard it was good, but I heard it. I heard a lot of people didn't like it.
Well, your
What
expectations are different for this, right?
what is there not to like though? What did they say? What did the critics say?
They said it's very indulgent, like self-indulgent, like to do some like certain actions in the game, like something about taking care of your horse is a bit too much, maybe too in depth for a video game. But again, there's a flip side where people really like being that deep into a game. I haven't played it, so
Yeah,
I'm just saying what I've heard. I don't know. I'm neither way for it. I did play the original one back on the PS3, and I thought that game was phenomenal, absolutely amazing. Um,
See, see the Rockstar Game Studio, every time they develop a game, they take it up a notch. Like they set the standards in a sense. And
open world games. Yeah.
yeah, so when they saw Red Dead Redemption 2, they saw an opportunity to kind of elevate the whole gaming genre in general. So I feel like some people might see it as like a nitty-gritty, nitpicking way of kind of doing your everyday chores, and you might completely hate that. but others might see it as an opportunity to kind of make sure that video games take over as the next sense of entertainment, right? So Rockstar did their best, I feel, but it's hit and miss at some point. You might not just enjoy it as much.
Yeah, and I mean personally, I feel like some people just have some hate towards Rockstar in general for the way they do their online practices in GTA. So I feel like some of the opinions are just a little bit biased.
Yeah, with GTA, it's a lot different, right? Some people literally live their entire life in that game, right? So, uh, in a sense, sometimes the multiplayer genre, it's hard to please everyone. So they tried their best. Um,
So Rumi, did you tame the white horse in the mountains?
no, I didn't go that far. To be honest, like how I usually play open world video games is like I come up with my own way to entertain myself as much as possible, and then finish off the game and not necessarily do all the side quests. Move on to the next one. So in that sense, I just try to beat the main story as much as possible, and then essentially I ended up playing Avengers right afterwards too, which was a completely different ball game to be honest. Like came into it with a lot of expectations, especially amount of budget they spent throughout the entire game, hyping up the whole storyline and also the model they were going to go for, the business model they were going to go for this game. But it didn't quite deliver. It was actually one of the first games that got destroyed after a month. The entire player base left. So that was a kind of disappointment from my side, especially being a Marvel fanboy and everything. So kind of
What
sucked.
happened? Like, how did they drop the ball so hard? Like I didn't play it either. I saw the trailers and I really just felt like this game was like 4 years too late.
You're right. You're right. It's like the when you see the game, the storyline is amazing. You jump in, you play as your favorite superhero. You can do whatever the hell you want. Like you can play as Captain America and beat the shit out of everybody. But the only problem is that's where it ends. There's no actual meat to the game. If you actually play it for a couple hours, all you see is that you're beating up the same robots over and over again, and the whole model they kind of made sure the whole free to play model that you actually paid the entire game for, and afterwards it becomes like a grind fest over and over to get your equipment, get your currencies, get your costumes. That's not something that player base were very happy about. Like, why would you play full amount of $60 game, 60 USD? But even then, you have to kind of grind out your microtransaction money to get what you want, right? So that kind of drop the ball, I'd say, for the player base. Player base are very different nowadays. You got to make sure that they're happy throughout the entire game, not just for like the first 5 hours.
Speaking of disappointing games, have you guys checked out Fallout 76's new update?
What happened? What'd you put?
They introduced the Brothers of Steel.
What is that? Is it like a raid or
No, it's a whole storyline with the Brotherhood.
like in a sense? So what do they do? Like, are they adding new quest line or is it more of a?
Yeah, new quest line, and they upgraded everything.
We tried to go on to play. I think we maybe were on it for an hour, and then we just realized it was the same stuff again. Like nothing had really changed, and it still felt busted or just uninspired. We gave up on it right away.
Is it the same old, like the whole buggy system of mess that we
Yeah,
initially played that?
I don't think 76 is ever going to redeem itself at this point. Not
Ever.
like No Man's Sky.
Yeah, at this point, it's just too far gone, man.
Do you think they gave up or they just wanna kind of get people coming back over and over to see what's up?
I think they have a hardcore player base now, and that player base is what they're catering to, even though it might be minimalistic.
People actually play that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's still a whole player base for that game.
It's that Atom shop, man. I think that's what's saving that game right now, or at least saving the company or people who are working on that game. If you just keep making more cosmetics, people keep buying it for some reason.
See,
Yeah,
that's what I.
I spent $20 too.
That's what I.
Oh
But
man, why?
in all
Yeah.
fairness, like that's kind of what a lot of the bigger games are doing. Why do you need to make a new sequel? Why do you need to do anything more when you can just expand on this open world, make a new skin, give like a new mission or a new town to go to? Grand Theft Auto has been living off that model for like how many years now, right?
See, that's the thing, right? It's a game as a service model. Like you don't necessarily have to innovate anything at this point. All you have to do is make a new skin, like you said, or make a new item that player goes for, right? And make it even make sure that it's actually payable. Don't make it free. Or if you want to make it free, make sure they actually grind it out. They spend that hard-earned time to get that item, or they can spend hard-earned money to get that item. It's like a model now. It's not necessarily a video game anymore.
I think where they messed up though was that, where Grand Theft Auto and Fallout both have cosmetics, Grand Theft Auto actually works.
Yeah, but Grand Theft Auto Online took about 2 years, 3 years before it got launched off and hit its peak like that. I remember
Yeah.
playing the original, the beta with you, I think, Ryan.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
we
mean,
didn't really enjoy it that much. It was hectic.
The
but you know
industry was
what?
different. Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead, Rumi. I'll say mine after.
No, I said the industry was different back then. I think it wasn't what it turned out to be a shit show right now. I think when Grand Theft Auto Online came out, there was still a matter of giving that substance to the players. You want to make sure the player enjoys your game. Nowadays, I don't think there is that goal anymore. It's more of how can we get our players to be addicted to our game as much as possible. So I think that's just the shift of industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
Remember when Grand Theft Auto released their actual gift cards? You can buy them at
Yeah.
Walmart for $50, and everyone was like, "Who the fuck will pay $50 for a GTA gift card?"
Boy, we were wrong.
Yeah, we were way wrong, dude.
Yo, guys, I'm telling you, gacha games have already taken Southeast Asia. They have already taken China over and Japan over. It's just a matter of time before everyone is used to paying for every single segment of a video game, right? Like, Genshin Impact has drained all of my savings, and I can have fun with the game now. But, like, it's like I'm so used to doing that. I'm so used to spending on a game that I remember back in the day when you can just buy a game and that $60 was all that you spent on it. Now it's like you're buying a game kind of like it's like a licensing deal, and if you want to like add on extra plugins and stuff, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for that, and no one is saying anything about it. It's like they don't have a problem with it.
Bro, it just makes too much money, man. And I'm sure the money's going in the right pockets, and that's why it's not really getting stopped anywhere. You only really see movement to stop the loot boxes and gambling aspect of it in European countries where they actually have some attempt to try to stop it, and it's pretty successful over there from what I've seen. But North America and the States,
A lot of
it's just
lobbying.
too much money to be in it. Yeah, exactly. A lot of lobbying. Like, it's just no way that it's going to be very difficult to stop it, just given how much money it makes. Like, look at NBA, and even the last commercial for NBA, was it 2K? Was it last year's one or this one? It was like a commercial you would see for a gambling app on a cell phone, like a casino app. Didn't feel like NBA at all. It just was so weirdly catered and weirdly designed. I don't know what they were thinking, but they must have hired the guy who did the Mongo's Casino or something to do the design for this thing. It's just was whack, man.
Yeah, but like from a consumer point of view, what can you do though, right? Like the government's never going to step in to make sure that as an entertainment industry, something's going to be different, even though it's actually gambling in a sense. You are paying money to get randomly generated items in a game, right? But from us, like we're used to it. What can we do? What do you think, guys?
So I'll play devil's advocate, right? Uh, you're saying you complain about paying money for stuff further in the game, but if you look at it by a monetary perspective, you get over 100 hours of entertainment for $60. Where else in entertainment are you going to get that? For a movie, for a 2 hour movie, you're only paying $20, right?
So let me counter argue with that though. Like you put in a full flesh game, you buy a full flesh game, and you buy maybe Assassin's Creed Valhalla or like even just any other open world games like Red Dead Redemption 2, right? You can get 100+ hours of entertainment from that without paying a single extra dime, right? So where's that difference? Like why can't consumers go towards those kind of games versus these kind of games? They are usually more popular, right?
Yeah, but
Uh,
there's an audience for that then.
yeah, there is an audience, and I think that's where it all comes down to. If people are willing to do it and it's the most lucrative option, then why would the company or whoever's deciding the decisions on the game not go that direction for their game? If there's way more money to make that type of game than the other one, then you're basically looking at either making more money or being a bit more, I don't know if it's moral or ethical, but again, like even if you look at even the bigger companies out there, it seems like there's always one game out there that's trying to take all your money. For example, Fallout 76, where they just have so much investment in the item shop and constant updates compared to the game that needs those updates. And then on the same side of Bethesda, you have Doom, which everything's available to you right away, right? And it's not a 100-hour game. You're still paying $60 or $80, whatever you have you, but you're getting so much more and completeness out of that game in comparison.
Yeah, you're right. It just it comes down to what the company believes in at the end of the day, right? Like if they believe in making money, then yeah, keep releasing these kind of games over and over. But if you want to deliver solid entertainment where people are like really engulfed into some kind of world where what we grew up with, guys, like we grew up with video games where it kept us entertained for hours and hours. I remember playing video games for the entire weekend on my literally one the TV that I had to share with other people. That value of that video game, they don't care about anymore. I feel it just uh, how can we get people to pay more money? That's the model they go for. There are some good companies still. There are still good companies who are still making those old school video games that we loved and grew up with. Nintendo is one of them, right? I don't see much microtransactions happening from Nintendo's point of view. There are some games that come out, AAA video games, Tomb Raider, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. There is, in a sense, Cyberpunk as well, but they're just not enough. So I would say like cater to the old generation as much as possible while still find some kind of way to make money. That's what I tell
I
the
don't think
company.
that's fair. I don't think that's fair
Why
to
not?
them. As a company, that's not fair that you demand uh, this huge package of entertainment and just only have to pay $60 for it.
But it was like
What
that before.
Exactly.
It was like that
Appreciate.
before, but that was also the Wild West of gaming. Now we are learning about where we can monetize it. And the
Bones,
future
I'm
isn't
sorry.
like that.
You know what? I see where you're coming from, and you're right. The future is now based in subscription service. Everything is like that.
Yeah.
Adobe is like that. You can get a DAW that's based off a subscription service. But at the end of the day, we all grew up on games where if I buy a console and then I buy a game to go with it, that's all I need. There's going to be no other issues with it. If there's going to be a patch or some DLC, I'm not expected to pay for it because we all grew up playing Pokemon and we all had Pokemon events where you go to EB Games or you get like a certain card and you type in the code and you get that Pokemon. Nowadays, it's like you have to pay if you want to have Pokemon in the PC. You got to pay if you want to get this extra island. You got to pay if you want to get this extra skin. There's no more hidden anything in a game for you to get. You're going to end up spending $80, $100 on a game that's half finished, and then you're expected to wait for DLC and all these updates to come, and you're expected to pay for so much of them. And
I agree with that. I agree with that. If you get a half-assed game and they're purposely doing monetization, then that's not fair to the consumer. But if it's already a finished game like Spider-Man and the DLC is irrelevant, that's it on.
But look at how quickly we got through Spider-Man. Was that really a finished game, or did they purposely make a short game because they wanted to put more effort towards DLC? They wanted to put more effort towards getting people online and interacting with others. Every game doesn't need to be online.
No, Spider-Man was a complete game.
No, I'm talking about the newer one, right? Like the newer one.
Miles, I never played that one yet.
Yeah.
Has anybody here played the new one?
Oh.
No, I've heard stories about it.
I watched the video.
My friends played it and they said that they didn't like how short it was. They enjoyed the gameplay of it. Like, it feels good to play and like it's very immersive. Like all Spider-Mans have been. All the Spider-Mans we played growing up. It felt like you were swinging around the city and it made use of the graphics of that generation to the best of its the engine's capability. But I want a game that has 60 hours of gameplay. I think in 2021 there's nothing wrong with spending almost $1 billion on a video game and knowing that it could just be you. You don't have to go online to get other aspects of the game. Even with old NBA games, like if I pulled out 2K, I can go through entire fantasy seasons by myself. I don't have to be playing with other people online. Now, for any fun for a lot of these games to have that immersive aspect to it, you have to spend money.
So let me ask you this. All right. You watch Harry Potter 1, the movie. Do you expect to pay for all the other Harry Potter movies? Or that's it?
I only expect to pay for the one and see the one, yeah.
But we all paid for the other runs, right?
Yes.
Every time we had to go to theater. And did we complain about that?
I think that's a
Well,
different story though. Like from a video game point of view, you would buy the franchise. Like there's games that had like 3 or 4 games coming out from it. You would buy all of them as a fan. That is how they get you to buy more new things because you're dedicated to their products, right? So in a sense, that's different than saying like, hey, we're gonna release half a game, we're not gonna do the other half, we're gonna give you as a DLC. That's a completely different thing. I feel like coming up with new products that are completely different, that innovates on the first product, is something that consumers should pay money for, but something that should have been free to begin with, that shouldn't be the case.
So you're saying extended edition movies, director's cuts
well, but Thushi,
are
that's
okay.
like the thing is, it is okay because when they make, I mean, you told me this yourself. I think it was you. When they make a movie, they can't. The director's cut could be like 3.5 hours, and a lot of it may not be what is really required to tell the story they want to tell in a general movie setting where people really don't want to be sitting for 3.5 hours in a theater. So if they cut out that stuff, then for the general movie going populace, they cover everything they essentially need to cover for them, and they're essentially satisfied. And then when they get to the people who want more, then that's when you release your extended edition and essentially go and give them that larger copy. And sorry,
Yeah.
just one more point, because I know you brought up like, would you be pay for Harry Potter to watch the franchise? But the way I'm seeing it is the way movies are doing it. I mean, obviously it's expensive to watch a 2-hour thing, but
Part one and part two. Like, what is
yeah,
that? That's
but
two half movies, right?
putting value based on time is one of the worst ways to enjoy anything. Because, and I'm gonna keep talking about Doom because Doom is like was contender for Game of the Year, man. It's so good. Okay, it's so good, so well designed. They took. Okay, I'll leave it alone for now. Point is, the point is that the game is not very long. It's only like 10 to 15 hours, right? So if you're
Have you
going in,
guys played
oh my
Doom?
god, I only got 10 to 15 hours of that game, then you might feel like you got gypped. But when you see what the game gives you and how it challenges you, it's like the best first person shooter ever, 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 without having to go online and have to, do whatever. It challenges you, it helps, makes you develop. And I'll leave it alone. But my point is, I don't like basing value of a game on how much time you had in it. Like, even to flip the coin, Persona 5, which is another game I played,
Yeah.
great game, absolutely phenomenal game. I thought that game was way too long. I spent 120 something hours completing that game, almost 3 or 4 months because of my other priorities here, right? That was way too long. Like, I felt like I got those, and it wasn't even like it was adding value. It was just the story just kept continuing and continuing. And a lot of people might like that if you have the time for it, but me personally, I didn't. But I did. That's not to take away from the game itself. But there's two ways to see it, right? Getting too much game might be too, it might be bad. Giving too little is also bad, right? Depends on how the game is.
No, I agree with you. Actually, I played Persona 3 last year too, and I found it to be so immersive. And even though it might take you hours and hours to beat it, for someone who likes the game, who likes the genre, they'll put in those hours. So you can get people hooked up to your genre, or hooked up to your product in different ways, rather than making them addicted to it via gambling or paying extra, right? So I feel it just how the companies approach this.
All right, all right. Here's another question. All right, you guys remember The Hobbit?
Yeah.
It was cut into 3 movies, one book, 3 movies, but no one really complained about it.
No,
So
no, no. I disagree.
A lot of people complained about The Hobbit.
But not as passionately as about video games.
No, well, see, here's the thing though. The Hobbit was split up into three because we were in an era where Twilight, where Hunger Games, where Harry Potter, where The Hobbit, all of these movies had to have sequels and extra spin-offs, and there was a part 1 and a part 2 because fans wanted to pay for that content. They wanted the entire book to be like adapted. They wanted certain characters to be more fleshed out than what was in the original source material. So The Hobbit was a misstep, definitely. But there were people that were showing up on day one to The Hobbit 3, even though Hobbit 1 and 2 reviews were terrible. That's targeting an audience. That makes sense. And if it's a movie, that has a wider audience than a video game. But like I am not really into the idea of someone like forcing all of this extra content on me just for the sake of taking money. Like, you can't just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks because you're diluting the product at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree, man. That's a good point. That I wouldn't mind if that was two. You can make it two if you want to get a little bit extra money out of it, because there's still a little bit to tell there. And a lot of books, when they make a movie, usually one movie is not enough to cover a book anyways. So I can agree too, but like, Pushing it to 3 was so obviously done just for the sake of getting that extra money, man. And you could tell like there was just, what were you really getting out of it?
What about? Let me ask you this: the Snyder Cut.
The Snyder Cut for Justice League. I mean, we're digressing a bit here, but
Yeah.
I'm very excited for a Snyder Cut. Like if I had to bring it back to games and kind of put it in the same length as Hobbit, Final Fantasy VII Remake, because that came out this year too. I was not a fan of that game. There's a lot of things I didn't like about that game. There was a few things that I liked, but that's the same kind of example as the Hobbit, where you're taking a product that could have been one single game, recreated exactly as the fans were essentially expecting it to be, and they are now breaking it up to who knows how many installments you want to do now. It could
See,
be more than 3 at this point.
See, for remaster, it's a different story, though, I feel, because there are kids in our generation that missed out on that game. That was an epic game. Some people consider it as the best game of all time. So, in a sense, to make that game a better experience for the new generation and maybe split it up into 2 different games just because the original way was not the best way to actually approach that video game, I feel like that's a plus. Uh, in a sense, some of the older games, if you go back to it right now, you're not gonna probably enjoy. Like it's just how the menu systems were or how the gameplay mechanics were, or not something that was meant for us. So when you remaster a game, make it into 2 different games. I wouldn't mind that. Get us to pay double the money. I don't care about that either. But make that game good is what I'm trying to get at.
And I don't disagree if you want to flesh it out and make it into multiple games, especially a game like Final Fantasy VII that's just so huge, and trying to fit maybe all that in just one package is very difficult. My concern is just they altered they did the same thing the Hobbit did, where they're just adding extra stuff in, which they think might be fleshing it out, but it's not. It's taken away from that total story. I could clearly see how they could do Final Fantasy VII and make it 2 simple parts if they wanted to. You know, you can go up to, I mean, if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII, it's spoilers, I guess, but they could clearly make it up to the point where Cloud goes to Niflheim. Oh, did you play the original Final Fantasy, Rumi?
No, no, this
Oh man. Okay, so there's clear ways they can
Need to
do
get
it.
you on
It's
that.
not gonna spoil too much, but when they go back to Cloud's hometown and there's a big revelation about who he actually is, they could cut the game right there in half. Then do the second half, which covers his recovery and so on. Right? What you said about remastering games for a new generation, the gameplay in Final Fantasy VII was awesome. So if you want to remaster it for this generation that might not be as keen to turn-based combat, it is slow. It's kind of boring. And I grew up on it, so I'm biased and I say I don't mind it. I grew up on that game too. So I mean, I see the old graphics and I just see Cloud. I don't see you know, big forearm man with skinny upper arms. You know, I don't see anything weird like that. Right? For me, it's just normal. But I'm totally on your side. Make a better game, change some things around. But they just the direction they just decided to go in with this was if like here's the other problem too, because they've changed the direction so far now with the game, with the ending, right, where you essentially have the ghosts who are trying to keep the characters of the Final Fantasy universe in the same path as the original game, but Sephiroth and the crew are now saying, you know what, screw that, we're going to do a whole brand new story now. Because they're doing a brand new story, you can no longer experience that original story that everybody else did without going back and having to deal with the turn-based combat and the bad graphics. So you're essentially screwing over your fans by doing this potential new fans and people who wanted to experience it but now can't. Like yourself, for example, or Thushi, who I remember I talked about this to you guys. Those graphics are hard to get by, but now like you have no choice but to deal with the new story.
No, I didn't know about the fact that they actually changed the story drastically. Yeah, then there's some kind of problem with that as well. Like there are new directions they probably want to take into. They probably felt that the new generation of gamers will not like that content. But yeah, if you're pissing off the old gen, the reason they became so great in the first place was because of the old gen game. So why change that? So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, one thing I've learned is like never piss off your fans. Like look like just we're digressing a bit more, but look at Star Wars. Look at
Yeah,
those 3 last movies they released. Totally
yeah.
wrong thing, you know? So I'm always on the side of, if you're advertising something, either be very clear as to what it's going to be, or tell them straight up that it's not, that it is a reimagining. Because they called it remake, and you can take that anyway. You could say, well, they remade the story. But if you're remaking something, does that, like if I'm remaking a chair, does that mean I add like 6 extra arms to the chair to make this? It's not the same chair at this point, you know? So I just thought they should be a bit more clear as to what they were doing. It's highly possible that this new story still follows in some aspects the original story so that you're still getting that same idea. But who knows at this point, right? You have to wait like another 4 years for the next game.
Way it's going, yeah, pretty much.
Have you guys heard of that game where it's an online game, but every match costs you $1 to play?
Wait, what?
What
It
game
was
is
a game.
this?
It was an online game. It came out a couple years ago. I remember reading in the news like if you wanted to play a match, you had to pay $1, and if you won, you got your dollar back,
This is gambling. This is
or you get
literally
like $10
Wow.
back, and you got
double
second
or
place, you get $5 back, and you got third place, you get $3 back.
So it is essentially, well, I don't even know if it's gambling. It's just kind of competing like you would in like a fighting game tournament or anything. If you think about it, it's just
yeah,
it. That's what it is.
It
you're
got so
betting
much
your money.
backlash that the game never went anywhere. It just died.
I can
They tried,
imagine.
they tried to do it like, oh, it's only going to cost you 25 cents for like 10 games.
What's the name of this game?
I have no idea. I heard about it and I was like, this is ridiculous, and I shut it out.
They're
I,
changing.
I
They're changing direction, so they're trying something different. But
I think it's called Dushy's Battle Arena. I think he's trying to do a plug, guys.
shameless
You
plug.
guys play Warzone?
Yeah, that was tried it out
That game
pretty good.
is, yeah, it's taken off a lot. I know a lot of people now that play it, and it's free to play, but you have to obviously pay for skins, and the DLC is free, and it's expansion, or so you know how EA, or not EA, Infinity Ward and Treyarch, they release a new Call of Duty game every year, right?
Mhm.
So what they're doing with Warzone is they release that game, but the Warzone hub is always attached to the new game, and it's like a whole platform now.
No, they're trying something different with this too. Initially, the previous Battle Royale they released, forgot the name of it, that took off for a good while, but it didn't really sustain the player base. So in this one, you're competing against some of the top dog players like Apex and Fortnite, but you're still doing pretty good. I think the Call of Duty fan base really latched onto this, and also the
Yeah,
streamers are helping this as well, right? So
Yeah, big time, big time. I I
they
I've
yeah they
I've
attract the
played it
entire
before,
market.
and I think sorry for interjecting there. I mean, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I really appreciate what it's trying to do. You know, like I mean, I've played it. You mean you play together. You can tell like it's not my game. It's good, but
it's
battle
too
royales
quick.
are just it's very quick. Yeah, it's very easy to get killed in that game, and it can be a bit frustrating. So, but I can see like the fact that they've created a Call of Duty that is a battle royale and is free to play is humongous for that company. You know, especially people who like Call of Duty but don't want to keep buying the next installment. Like what you said, Tushi, the fact that they're still keeping that map relevant as the games come out is great.
Yeah, like it also caters to people who are not very competitive, like you mentioned, right? You don't like very competitive games, so they have that whole gulag system in there too. If you die once, you have a chance of coming back, and there's a lot of memes about that gulag. People kind of caught into that the concept. But yeah, it makes it stands out from the other battle royales where it's not as competitive, and there's a second chance for video games.
Do you guys think that Warzone had the same impact on gaming culture that MW2 did when we were younger?
No, no, Modern Warfare 2 was something else, dude. Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops when those games came out, huge, man.
So like
Um,
it's a good point that you bring out there. Modern Warfare 2 literally revolutionized the first person genre as a whole. Like I was last year I was actually playing what is that game? The one where you it's a story mode. Completely forgot the name, blanked out there.
Titanfall.
Um, not the Titanfall, the very first Bioshock 1. I played that game, and after playing 2 hours of it, I realized I can't go on because like when you're trying to switch weapons, you got to press a button, and when you reload, there's a completely different combination, and when you can't even aim down the sight by pressing right click anymore, you have to switch over to a different types of spell mechanics that they have. So I'm like, I can't play this shit. Literally, Call of Duty was the game that made sure that whole template of first person shooter carries on forward. So I think Modern Warfare 2 has a huge impact on gaming. That's where it started.
I mean, I remember when that game came out and there were like people who don't even play games were talking about it. You know, like people I knew, like girls from school or whatever. They don't talk about games at all, but they were talking about playing Modern Warfare 2 and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on with this, man? Uh, it's just a huge game. I honestly don't feel like Call of Duty is ever. It's always going to be popular, but it's never going to reach that height that Modern Warfare 2 did.
Yeah, Modern Warfare 2 was really balanced. It gave you all those maps were balanced, teams were balanced.
Sorry,
It was also not moderated, so it was really fun to just interact with other players.
I'm not sure about balance, man.
I
Yo,
think it
kill
was balanced.
streaks. Are you
No.
sure?
Besides kill streaks, like fighting a one-on-one fight was easy. You can do either sniping or you can run around. You can do shotguns. You can go akimbo.
I
You can
think
go
what
to
you're trying to
assault.
say. I think what you're trying to say is there was a lot of versatility in the ways to play the game. You're not just
Yeah,
having to shoot someone, but to say it's balanced, I'd have to disagree almost entirely because one man army with a grenade launcher and danger close destroyed that game. And everybody used it. It was very effective. And I remember when the going got tough for you, it would be your go-to class to go to in that game.
It's like I'm done. Move on.
But I honestly I do miss that game. I think that Activision missed a humongous opportunity making that game multiplayer, bringing it back just the way it was on a new generation. Huge missed opportunity, making it only single player so that you don't cut into the profits of your next whatever release, Advanced Warfare, what have you. I think they could have planned it better. That was just so many people played that game. I know me personally, I took it personally. And so I really think
yeah. You're
that,
like a prestige level 10, bro.
yeah, I was like level 4,
That
man.
means
I
you
played a
leveled
lot.
up to a level 100 10 times.
Holy shit. But like going back to that topic, actually, I feel like you can't quite balance the entire game either in a multiplayer game, right? There's gonna be always one class that's gonna
Yeah,
overpower everything else.
that's why you gotta
So
switch it up every time. Every update, you gotta
mm,
switch it up to who gets the power that time,
yeah,
and then fuck everyone up, and then they all figure out who's better now. Who's better now? I can tell you in Apex, there's always one character that's always bomb, but they're always nerfing and buffing things, and then everyone
Yeah,
just hops onto the next boat.
Are you guys still playing Apex?
Yeah,
yeah,
we're playing
I'm
tonight
not.
too.
Damn.
yeah.
Okay, so Rumi, you're not. You're smart. You moved on. Why did you move on from Apex and leave these guys, these cavemen in the past?
So for me, gaming has always been a way to escape reality, right? And whenever I play Apex, I see that there's other people running around who dedicated a lot more time than I have in a video game, and that are way better than me. And in a sense, I can never compete with that. Being an adult with different priorities, wife duties, marriage duties, there's hard to kind of get better at video games now, right? So in a sense, I kind of moved away from competitive video games and I ended up focusing more on single player video games where I can take my time into enjoying the entire game without dedicating too much time into it as well. Like I can come back to it whenever I want and not feel that I'm being left behind by some kind of new patch that came out that completely changed the entire metagame of that video game, right? So in a sense, for me, it's always been trying to shift away from online competitive video games and enjoy something that I can enjoy by myself.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rumi. Like I play it. I do enjoy the game. It's still like I mean I played it before with Dushi. It's really only the only game I have that I can play with like Dushi and Rakib in them. So that's the reason I come back every so often. But I agree with you 100%. Especially when you have other things to focus on, it's hard to keep up with people who have way more time to play those games. And I personally just don't enjoy going onto a game and just getting absolutely demolished all the time. It just kind of ruins my mood for that night. So for me to go and play something like whatever single player game, like Doom, for example,
Yeah.
even though that game can be challenging and I can get absolutely smoked because I'm not really learning the mechanics in those situations, it's still I'd rather do that every time.
Yeah, I agree. It's no one likes losing at the end of the day. So like focus on something else that you can actually win. It's not a bad management of your time per se. It's just what you enjoy. At the end of the day, it's video games, right? Like it's meant to be enjoyed the way you want it to
Exactly,
be.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think what we need specifically our group is a new co-op game. Like Left
Yeah.
4 Dead was there, but that new I don't that spiritual successor for Left 4 Dead, that's what I'm
Mm.
waiting for right now, man.
Yeah.
We're talking about we were talking about today the new Lair game.
Oh, so that
Mm.
was I didn't hear about that actually.
It's remember on PS3 that game where you had to like move around with the controller and fly on a dragon.
Oh, the dragon riding game. I heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a making a new one right now. We were talking about the trailer. I don't know what it's called. It's called Century. I think. Centurion, Century. Yeah, it's the same thing, just riding around on a dragon, but now it's multiplayer.
You know
Nice.
what, man?
That's what we need. More multiplayer games.
Yeah, I think this is super saturation of multiplayer games out there, man. Like, I don't know how they're supposed to expect to keep their audience.
You got,
Do you guys think we're going to see a comeback of the single player game, the story driven single player game? Maybe you can do like 2-player, but no more of this online stuff.
Yeah, man,
Um,
Cyberpunk.
That's the dream, but I don't think
That's
so,
true,
man.
yeah. So
Cyberpunk was
Cyberpunk, the
supposed to
hero
be
that was
big.
supposed to be.
yeah,
That
it
was
was
the
supposed to
big
be.
game.
It was supposed to be. It really was. But I don't feel like single player games have gone anywhere. Like, there's still people like myself and Rumi, who are looking out for those games and wanting to play them. It's just multiplayer games, again, they're way, like, I think it came back to another point that Rumi put too, which is just they're so addicting, so
Mhm.
it makes more sense to make a multiplayer game. Hopefully that's good, that you can get people invested in, then you can make more money. Again, it goes back to money, making whatever you have. Single player games is tough to do that on. You finish your story, what else you really want to do in that game?
Yeah, you sell it off to the next person. That's all you do.
Exactly, yeah. Multiplayer games can potentially last forever. Like Rainbow Six has been out for what, 4 or 5 years now, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, and they're still going, and they're still releasing new characters. There's still updates. There's still a lot of people playing it. So I don't know.
Meta now.
It is, yeah. I mean, I'm always going to be a single player guy, but if I'm like 40 and the super shift goes to like only gotcha games and multiplayer games, I can always go back and hopefully play my SNES emulator and sit there like an old
Oh,
man.
no, there's always nostalgic factor to be had with old games. So you guys have been playing any of the older games recently?
Oh,
I tried
Like,
playing Fire Emblem again, and then I think I'm old enough in life to realize that I don't like JRPGs. I don't like RPGs. I don't like action RPGs. I don't like any of them. I've been lying to myself all of these years. I don't have the patience or like the knowledge for strategy. I'm over that.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get into it, those RPG games. And then the storyline is what kind of drives those games, I feel. Like if you're a follower of animes per se, you've probably seen those storyline play out very similarly into other shows, right? So in a sense, for you to go back to older games, older RPGs especially, you're gonna feel nostalgic, but I feel like you're gonna be like, oh, this is cliched as hell. I've seen this happen over and over and over, even though they kind of defined that genre at that time. But nowadays, it's you've seen this way too much.
yeah, I think especially with JRPGs, there's a lot of cliches. You see it over and over again. However, I played it, and again I said the length was an issue, but because we all watch anime here, like a lot of anime, I'm highly recommending this game. Like, this is the
hey,
JRPG to
don't talk
end
about
all JRPGs.
Persona. Don't talk about Persona.
No, because because my concern with you, Tushi, is that you
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 don't have no
message me
concerns about me, man. Mind your own
occasionally.
business. Mind
You
your own business.
occasionally
You don't need
okay.
no concerns.
You occasionally message me to say you're bored, you have nothing to do, and then I recommend these games that
You're
are
terrible.
fairly.
You're terrible at recommendations. From
I'll
now
leave it
on,
at
I
that.
went to Rumi.
Oh wow.
Oh wow, the tide has changed. You're gonna be playing Avengers, buddy. Avengers.
Oh boy.
If you lie to me, Rumi, my heart will break, and then I'll have to go to someone else.
Aw.
What's
I
the
don't know
game?
what.
What's the recommendation?
For me this year, I would say Cyberpunk, as much as controversial as it is, people are gonna hate me for this. I feel like you gotta give it a shot. Again, I don't agree with the fact that you shouldn't be releasing a game where it's completely
Not
shit
according to
show.
the game finishing, but according to the release date of how much money you can make.
Yeah, no,
That
I
was
agree
that
with you.
was a big mistake.
Okay, so hold on. Let's take it back a second. Did you guys like Cyberpunk or not?
I was getting to like it, but I lost my painting, so I deleted my file, and then
But
I gave up.
did you like the game despite the flaws?
For me, I've loved the game despite the flaws. I feel there's a certain amount of patience that you need to play certain these kind of games.
Yeah, like
Not
12.
everyone is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not everyone can kind of go through these bugs. And again, there are a lot of bugs, mind you, and it is unplayable on certain consoles. And if you have the patience to go through with it, I feel like there's some kind of masterpiece hidden behind it. The storyline is amazing. The side quests requires a little bit of work. It's very similar to some of the other games we've played in the past, but in a world where like you can kind of be whoever you want, not as much as freedom as other games, but uh, you can make it your own character and kind of go forward with in this futuristic setting is something that we haven't played in a while.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, I know Rumi liked it. I know Tushi's kind of mixed. I'm mixed. I even without the story choices and branching paths, like, I mean, we can
And
get
kind
into
of
all the promises that they made and didn't fulfill, but my biggest concern, like when I play a game, I want really good gameplay. Whether the story's good or whether the story's bad, if I don't like actually going in and doing what I'm supposed to be doing minute to minute, then you're not going to keep my attention. And my concern with this was the gameplay was wicked, but after a certain point, you become so strong, so powerful that there's nothing that can challenge you in the game.
there
No
was no
matter,
checks
and
and balances. Yeah,
there's a lot of balancing that needs to be done. Like being able to like there's just so many little things, minutiae that they missed. Like this little painting that you can resell over and over again and essentially make an infinite amount of money. That's one. You any class that you play, like I play the hacking class, and once you get that hacking class to its maximum level, you don't even have to engage in combat. You can sit outside of a building, use an ability to see people through the walls, then use your abilities on those people and just decimate all of them. And at that point, you're like, what are you doing at that point? The gameplay is dead. Earlier in the game, where you had to kind of balance your cooldowns and your regeneration of your RAM, was a lot of fun while playing stealthy, so you don't get jumped. Right, was really interesting. But then you keep going, and it just gets to a point where there's no challenge anymore, and that's when I stopped playing personally.
that's when you gotta go play Hitman or hacking
Yeah,
simulator
exactly. Yeah, it made me think about
2000.
Hitman. Made me think about like other games that did it better. So that's when I started actually playing Dishonored too.
You know what? Even the driving in that game was terrible. I got the most expensive, nice off-road vehicle, and I tried driving around. It was fucking terrible. The
So
only
I feel
good
like
vehicle in that game was the motorcycle.
So I feel like, in a sense, I think they had a really great ambition for a very, very long time. They tried to deliver on it and they failed. This was like a version one of some kind of great game that might be out there even now. Maybe they'll release a lot of patches and fixes this game up completely in 2 years from now, maybe like No Man's Sky. But as of right now, like they had some substance, they had some meat in there, but they didn't quite deliver.
It was card and grease.
Yeah,
I you know
for
what? I don't even think this game can pull a No Man's Sky, man. I don't think they can do it.
really. What do you
They
think so?
expect a lot on this game.
Because
If they don't.
here's the
This doesn't hit, or it doesn't last a couple of years. Their next game may not even come out. The company might go
yeah.
under.
Yeah, exactly. Because well, they're getting sued too. Like I don't think No Man's Sky's backlash was as bad as Cyberpunk's backlash. Plus, No Man's Sky was a relatively unknown studio, so they came out. The game was bad, whatever, right? It was bad, but they worked on it so hard to get it to where it is now. And the people who like that type of gameplay are now really liking it. They delivered on what they should have essentially delivered originally. But Cyberpunk, like they came out with this. They're already a studio with a reputable reputation. Um, and then it just essentially blew it all away just to make some extra money, like Dushi said, to release it
And they didn't
before
even make the
Christmas
extra
time.
money. Everyone just refunded it. Like
Exactly.
they had
So
no
it
one else's
backfired big
refunds.
time. Not to mention you have
I
a
put over 100 hours into it, and I got a refund.
the other thing too that's shooting them in the foot is with No Man's Sky, they essentially went dark. Like the game came out and then you didn't hear anything from them for a while because they were trying to plan and figure out how they were going to get this game back on track. But then you have the CEO of CD Projekt Red who just has to keep coming out to say all these different things and is really just shooting himself in the foot, saying how it was their decision to release it, but then we also didn't see that the game was as bad as it was on previous consoles. Like there's no way you can
No, there's no way.
say that, man. Like there's just no way. You must have known it
Someone
was in
saw
this
it.
state and decided to do it. Exactly. Somebody
Someone
saw it and
saw
they
it, and they
decided to
got
check.
buried. They got buried.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
Exactly.
I think I agree with you guys, but do you possibly think that they saw the flaws in the game and they assumed that releasing it during this time, during lockdown, to coincide with PS5 release, that people would look past the flaws?
See,
Like in all fairness, I'll come back to you in a second, Rumi. Just give me, in all fairness, this PS5 release was the most hyped console release of all time because it's coming out in an era where everyone has social media, where everyone is willing to pay triple retail for whatever product they want. It doesn't matter if it's shoes or video games. Memes is a form of advertisement that companies don't need to pay for, but it's also a sort of engagement that everyone, even if you have nothing to do with video games, you're going to come across. So in my eyes, I think they they put it out thinking that everyone would embrace this game with flaws and look past its unreadiness and just want to buy it up. So it was definitely a money factor, but I think they were not looking at the fact that we want good products. And this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier about releasing unfinished games and then trying to patch everything up later on. Cyberpunk seems to be like one of the last few nails in the coffin before we start revolting against that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about, Kieran. And it's just this unprecedented amount of games that just keep coming out like this. Like you can't. They're taking advantage of the fact that things are online nowadays, to do it like this. And it's like it's disrespectful to your consumers. And then it really should be. Really, it needs to be like we know it's video games you're talking about, and there's big, more important things out there. But if you're in this industry, someone has to be held accountable for doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's like police investigating themselves for crimes, right? The the
Good point.
the governing body for video games is run by the companies that make video games.
Exactly.
The
See,
ESRB is run by Activision, Infinity War, all of them. They all have a piece of the pie. So it's basically them governing themselves because they don't want the government to intervene.
in a sense, you're right. Like there are some expectations that must be set by the companies themselves, but I also feel the pain from the development point of view as well, right? Seeing there's a yearly release for some of these games like Assassin's Creed, or even a timeline crunch where you have to meet the deadline for a new console to come out and co-align with that console release as well is very tough for developers out there, right? They're working literally 10, 12 hours a day trying to fix bugs of a new video game, at the same time come up with new requirements that are getting pushed to you every single day by like the hiring up managers telling you you must have this feature, that feature. It has to beat potentially Grand Theft Auto in some of these features as well. So it gets very tough for them. Like seeing some of these companies, Ubisoft, they work their developers for about 12 to 14-hour shifts every single day, and sometimes when you go back home, it looks really bad upon you as well. Like you're like, why are you going home? You should be working more to deliver the timeline. So I feel the challenge from a consumer point of view that you want a good game, but from the development point of view, it's hard to deliver one. And and every single year the timeline gets shorter and shorter because the expectations keep going up too. So how do you
Yeah.
balance that?
I think at some point it's got to come to a head. Like the developers are just they're honestly at the end of the day, I think they're the real victims. Man. Like just like you said, the CEOs are making all their money, but it's these guys who are sacrificing everything because they have such a passion. But at some point, it's going to become so bad that there's just not going to be that the quality that we're going to see from games we used to see. It's just going to be garbage all the time, right? Always issues, always things going on because they're pushing or they're rushing or they're tired, and you're not going to get good quality out of workers if you're tired, man. Like I work an 8-hour shift and I'm dead. I'm done at like 4 hours, So imagine doing 14 to 16 hours, and still attempting to try to work on this thing, staring at that screen.
Mhm.
I just can't imagine it, and it's got to come to a head at some point. Like everything's going to come to a head, but we'll have to just see how it plays out.
No, I agree. It's at the end of the day, I feel like we as consumers sometimes have to wait it out. Like I think there was a great quote by Nintendo head, I forgot his name. A great game is forever. A delayed game is eventually good, but great game, a bad game is bad forever. I forgot. I messed up the quote, but that's how it goes.
That's a direct translation. It's okay. It works. No, you're right. But that's the thing. When there's so much money involved, studios just care about releasing it in time for the holiday season. Everyone's getting stimulus checks, so make sure you release this, make sure you release that. I want to see video games go back to the stance of it being an artistic release, right? Like we now look at video games with the same anticipation as we do blockbuster movies, and those games have the same budget, if not more, than blockbuster movies. So I don't mind waiting 6 more months if it means that you're going to give me something that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, right? But I want to remember the good experiences. I don't want to remember everything bad about it, because it doesn't matter what Cyberpunk does, it's always going to be bogged down with its poor release. And
Mhm.
that's something that it'll never be able to escape. It doesn't matter if a sequel comes out in 3 to 5 years and it's better. It doesn't matter what patches or upgrades that it gets. It was just a shit release. It was very poorly done.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because I remember when Fallout 3 came out, that game was mad buggy. Like it would crash on you all the time. It was just random issues with that game. But um, so it was like widely accepted as a great game. But I don't know if that was just compounded and steamrolled into the problems we're seeing now. Because you look at Fallout 76 and it just seems like Bethesda's not learning. But I just find it weird. Back then I guess we were more accepting, but now because we're seeing such a trend, it's got to stop.
Bones and I spent hundreds of hours playing Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and even though those glitches were really terrible, I think the game spoke for itself. Like, yeah, it was glitchy, but it didn't take away from the storyline. A lot of times it was like, oh, okay, why am I walking through this mountain? Oh, okay. Why is the knock knock flying through my crotch? I don't understand what's happening. But it was also a different era, right? Like people who don't play Cyberpunk, like all of our girlfriends, all of our wives know Cyberpunk, but they also have probably seen memes about it being like really shitty and like with dicks hanging off someone's head. Back in like 2008 or whenever Fallout came out, there was no Instagram to put up memes of all that stuff, right? So I guess timing and era does matter a lot in cases like this, but like Fallout was still pretty good even though it had its flaws.
Yeah, I play Fallout New Vegas like once a year, just because it was just so good, just so well done. Um, it's a lot easier on PC with all the patches and stuff. If you play on like PlayStation 3, you're gonna be having a rough time for sure. But I
Have
love
you
it, man.
played
Like,
Miami?
nah, I don't, I've heard of it, but I really want to focus on some of the newer games that are in my backlog. But not yet. I heard of it though.
What else are you guys playing?
I'm playing
Uh,
Ghost of Tsushima.
ooh, that's actually a good game.
That's a good game. That's a good game.
What do you think of it, man?
Okay, it was fun for the 2 hours I played.
Do you feel that the difficulty is worth it? Do you feel that player who are going to be thrown off by the difficulty curve for games like these are going to be not playing these games? Do you think the difficulty they put in there is something good to be measured on?
It wasn't a difficult game. It's a story game, right? I never got to. I don't know. I think there is a multiplayer, but I never got to that point.
I didn't know Ghost of Tsushima was hard. I thought. Are you thinking of Sekiro?
Wait.
Shadows Die Twice.
No,
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
There's two samurai games that came out last year.
I
yeah, yeah.
completely confused.
Which is nice because they're both really good games. So can't fault them for that. I haven't played Sekiro
You're
yet
gonna
personally,
get
but
canceled for that.
oh no.
Ghost of Tsushima is like an artistic game, artistic story mode game.
Oh yeah, I completely messed up the two games.
Dushi, you should play Dark Souls.
You should find someone else to recommend your games to.
Rumi,
wanna
you
be
should play Dark
frustrated?
Souls.
You want to be frustrated for the rest of your life, by all means.
You know what, man? The game is like, I understand the memes, but before the memes came out, like when I played Demon Souls, I never felt frustrated. I just felt like there was an enemy in my path, a boss, and I just had to beat him and learn how to beat him, and that's it. But then all the memes came out about like focusing on, oh, you're gonna die and you're gonna break your controllers and all this stuff. And I think that's where the focus went to. But these games are so well made. The story is like it's like the story is one of those stories where you have to look at the armor and read the descriptions to understand backstories for certain characters and things like that. um, you can easily go through that whole game and never really understand the story. Like me, I just play it because I like the gameplay and I like learning and exploring and stuff like that. But like for someone like Dushi, and the reason why I keep recommending it is because it really, I feel like you like those games that have a really decent lore, right? And this is like the holy grail of those type of games. So I'm going to keep recommending it because it's just a game you have to play. And if you haven't played it before, I'm not too sure what to say.
All right, you know what, guys? Let's talk about H games.
No, please, man, no.
And
No.
that's the end of the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the first episode of Four Casuals. We really appreciate having you. Guys, do you have anything to plug?
Keep on gaming, guys.
Don't
H
do
games are the
drugs.
best.
Oh my God.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.